Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi everybody, I can hear the fly buzzing around. Pete reckons it's not the same fly. Can't be the same fly.
Can't be, no.
Anyway, it's settled. I can whiz by and settle down. Welcome to the garage, ladies and gentlemen. We're not fly infested. There's just one character who comes in every week, every day of every week, actually. Anyway, the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton's behind the camera. Welcome to the show, where we look at a whole lot of stuff and go worldwide. And pretty much the same on Friday, sitting at the dining room table, only you get to ring us up and have a go and correct us if we're wrong. Say what you like, thump the table, rattle the cage, shake the tree, all those good things. It's what talk radio should be about. And that's what we're trying to reinstate here in Adelaide. But we've got the advantage now of going global. Pardon me. I have a lot of indigestion for some reason, and I've got to get that checked out. Don't know why. Anyway, doesn't matter. Little business. Bill got in touch with me and said you were talking in the last show about Australia not being the beneficiary of this huge advantage of owning this fantastic resource of coal, yet we can't use it, but we can export it to China and India. Our global emissions are 1%. And Bill said, well, can you tell me what China and India contribute to global emissions? Yes, I can. I mean, you could Google it yourself. That's how I found out. China and India contribute to global emissions greatly. Exactly, China, 28% of global emissions. India, less, 7%. Australia, as I've said to you, 1%. China is the first, that means to say the worst, global polluter, and India is the third worst in world rankings. Yet this government denies us the use of our own coal to enhance the economies and the lifestyle of the big polluters. Where is the integrity? Where is the common sense? Where is the logic? Nothing. As I said to you the other day, I would impeach the Prime Minister. He is not acting in the interests of the people of Australia. Pure and simple. A big demonstration on the steps of Parliament House by Palestine supporters last weekend. Very similar protests in every capital city, by the way. Largely peaceful here. I don't know about elsewhere. Noisy, but peaceful. But nevertheless, the Palestinians are terrorists. Or, so close to them I can't tell the difference. Well, you know, I mean, to be explicit, Hamas is the terrorist organisation. But the Palestinians must be complicit. They are so embedded in Palestine. It cannot possibly be in the Gaza Strip that the Palestinians don't know they're there. That's impossible. So, you're known by your friends, as my mother used to say. It's quite unbelievable. Judged by their behaviour, Hamas are a subhuman race, subhuman nature. It's interesting that the Liberals cancelled the aid money that was sent to Palestine or to the Palestinians. I'm still not sure in my mind where Palestine is. But we used to give to the Palestinians millions and millions of dollars. Why? Why? It's as much of a mystery as this bloody fly. Like all the aid money that is given, and I suspect it's not only by Australia, it's probably by every aid contributor in the world. Nobody knows where the money goes, and I'm not even sure that anybody cares. But now the Albanese government has reinstated the money. The Libs cancelled it, quite rightly. Albanese has reinstalled it. So not only do we tolerate their protests and their nonsense, but we support them financially. Go figure. I wonder how many of those demonstrators and protesters are rent-a-crowd. I just hope that ASIO keeps a track. I would suspect that at all the climate change, LGBTIQ, out with the oil, usual suspects, I would suspect that there are many familiar faces. Now, don't get me wrong, we all have an inalienable right to demonstrate, and I certainly would not argue with that. But I worry about the professionals, the same faces, because, you know, they're not interested in the cause. They're interested in the disruption. That's all they want to do. They just want to disrupt society. And we kind of let them do it. Oh, it's democracy. Well, it certainly is, but you can't tell me that these people in the Middle East are for democracy. They are ISIS. They are the Islamic State. With regard to this, I had a chat to John Bruni this morning, and John's going to come in on the show on Friday, jeremycordeaux.com, live streaming from 9 o'clock. He'll be there about 9:30. He's got a fantastic insight into a lot of these world machinations. The trouble with the Middle East is it's so complicated, politically, religiously, fanatically, emotionally, tragically. It will have to go somewhere. John Bruni's company is called Sage International. It's very good. He provides a lot of intelligence to major international companies because of his insight into the intrigues of international politics. 9:30 at the dining room table. You can ring and talk to him if you want to. So much criticism of Israel's attack on the Gaza Strip. I can understand. Innocent civilians, they cry. Innocent civilians. Well, the Israelis have given, I don't know how many hours notice. I don't know how practical it is to pack up your stuff and your kids and your family and go down one of two little roads getting out south from Gaza to save your life. I don't know how practical any of that is, but at least they have given these people warning. That is more than the Palestinians gave to the Israelis. I would say this, you know, and I'm no sage, I'm no beneficiary of any great wisdom, but be careful of who you throw your lot in with. By that I mean who you support, who you vote for, who you champion. People did it in Europe with Hitler. Hitler could not have done what he did without public support. People in Japan threw their lot in with Tojo. Tojo, who was the Prime Minister. I'm not talking about the Emperor, Hirohito, I'm not talking about him. Tojo was the politician. The people threw their lot in with him. Let's take Japan as an example on a larger scale to what's happening in the Middle East. A precedent. The Japs attacked the Americans at Pearl Harbor. Unprovoked. Sound familiar? Unprovoked attack on America. War was declared. After years of fighting, a fanatical enemy, the Japanese were, and I'm not sure they're still not fanatical, I mean they are what they are. We fought this fanatical enemy to the point where the war was over, but they were not going to quit. We warned the Japanese, surrender or else. They didn't, regardless of civilians, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of civilians, non-combatants, Japanese people. The Americans took them out. Hiroshima and Nagasaki took them out. As I say, be careful who you vote for and who you support, because they can take you straight to hell. And they won't be around. You know, they may take you in a terrible direction. But who wants to be collateral damage? They, of course, will ultimately surrender and go on to write a book. We, the people, usually die. I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, I really don't know. Pete, we've got something to stick on the end.
Yes, we have, Jeremy. Yes, Andrew Bolt and...
Oh, yeah, that was good fun.
Yeah, Andrew Bolt and Chris
Kenny. Yeah, they're on the same station. I don't know that they're on the same page.
No, they're not.
All right, that's coming up. That's a bit of fun. I really wish when people... I had a look at it. I really wish when people argue that they didn't talk over each other. Because nobody wins. You can't hear. You can't decipher. You know, let him have his point, you have your point. He has his point, you have your point. I think that's the way to go. Happy birthday. If you're having a birthday, ladies and gentlemen, or a wedding anniversary, happy birthday to my daughter Amber, who was born this day. I well remember. In fact, I've got a picture down near the dining room table where we broadcast the show on Friday. She was only a couple of hours old. Well, not even an hour. She would have been 30 minutes old. And they gave me this little bundle all wrapped up in a blanket. And now she's a grown woman who today turns 40. You don't think that makes me feel old? God. Oh dear, oh dear. October the 18th. What can I tell you about today? Buckingham Palace announces that Prince Charles would sign for one term at Geelong Grammar School at Timbertop, that's near Mount Buller, in the Great Dividing Range of Victoria, starting February 2, 1966. And he did his time at Timbertop, I believe. But that was back in 1965. Now this I want to tell you about because I think this is interesting. I know in the 50s and 60s, I thought that was the halcyon era of Australian living. It was the leave it to beaver, the father knows best. It was the simple time of living in Australia. Peaceful, law-abiding, affordable. But there were people, radicals, and not even radicals, agitators who wanted change. We're bored, which was, of course, the beginning of Whitlam. Menzies was the Prime Minister. The total number of people registered with the Commonwealth Employment Service in Australia on this day in 1965 was 35,651 people. It was a fall on the previous month of 144. It meant that there was 0.8% of the Australian workforce who was unemployed. Unemployment was 0.8%. And we were bored. And along comes Whitlam and his manic determination to line up with the socialists of the world and the Lima Convention, which wiped out largely huge swathes of Australian employment and industry, and we still suffer from it today. And I don't see anybody being critical of that era and that man, and my God, he has a lot to answer for. Anyway, be that as it may. Homicide started on Australian television in 1965. Who is this? Melina Mercouri was born in Greece in 1925. Thomas Edison died in Orange, West Orange in New Jersey on this day in 1931. Ronnie Bright was born, former drummer and singer with the group The Coasters. He has the distinctive bass voice on Johnny Cymbals' 1963 hit of Mr. Bassman. Good song, Pete.
Yeah, I remember it. Yes.
Yeah, hey, Mr. Bassman. Lovely song. I loved that. Gee whiz. Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin was attacked by demonstrators in the grounds of Parliament House in Ottawa. He was unhurt. That was in 1971. USA took formal possession of Alaska from the Soviet Union in 1867. That was the best land deal I think anyone ever did. I think it was about $7 million. And they never even went there, the Russians, so they didn't know it was full of gold and oil and all the rest of it. Fascinating. Elizabeth Arden died in New York City in 1966, US cosmetic executive and racehorse owner. Pierre Trudeau was born in Quebec, former Liberal Prime Minister of Canada, 1919. Present Prime Minister is his son. Both a couple of lefties, really, but anyway, be it as it may. Keith Michel got married in 1957. Charles Gounod died in Paris, French composer of operas, including Faust. Australian elections. Malcolm Fraser was returned as Prime Minister of the federal government. Majority in Parliament cut from 49 seats to 23 seats. This was 1980. Bob Hawke moved into federal Parliament with a massive personal endorsement from his federal seat of Wills. And that was the beginning of the end for Malcolm Fraser, who had, a great deal of trouble empathising and I spoke to him many times when I was on the air at 5DN, and I could never quite get a very imposing man, very tall, very imposing, Prime Minister of Australia. I came to the conclusion that he was just terribly shy, absolutely shy, and not with a personality that really could be Prime Minister. And yet he kept the man who could have been the John Kennedy of Australian politics, Andrew Peacock, out of the top job. Personal ambition. I would like to have politicians with national ambition or patriotic ambition to do what is best for the country. And if Albanese did what was best for the country, he'd resign. But I digress, I'm sorry. Roger Clemson was born, newsreader from Sydney. I knew him well, he was good. I used to work with him at 2GB, 1936. And George C. Scott, just one more. George C. Scott was born. The C stands for Campbell. Cantankerous, explosive and controversial actor. Best known for characters like General George S. Patton, Chief of Staff in the Hospital series, which was called St. Strangelove. Don't remember that. He won an Oscar for his role in Patton, but never bothered to turn up for it. Funny man. Anyway, that was 1927. Happy birthday, George. And again, happy birthday to my daughter, Amber. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion today from the garage. Believe in yourself. We'll see you tomorrow. And don't forget Friday, live streaming from the dining room table from 9 o'clock. We're trying to build this. With your help, we will. John Bruni will join us. And Leon Biner promises me he will turn up. I honestly think he's getting forgetful. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. I promised him a spot at 10:30. We'll see about that. And the bloke who came up with this wonderful idea of life is a Cabernet. I like that. Not a cabaret, a Cabernet. Have a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. I think you'll enjoy it. Meantime, we'll see you tomorrow. Believe in yourself. And from Peter Clayton and me, Jeremy Cordeaux, goodbye for now.
We've got Andrew Bolt still with us. Andrew, your reaction to that?
Well, I find it astonishing that Chris is still running this thing as, it's the no campaign that's racially divisive, as he tries to sell us still, despite the result, a racially divisive proposal. Australians have looked at it and said, this will divide us by race, Chris, and they do not want it. And it's not the no campaign that's being divisive. And you can say, oh, look, there should be bipartisanship. Fine, Chris, why don't you agree with me and at least 55% of Australians on this proposal? Then we will have bipartisanship. Mate, you ran and you lost. You fought your fight and you lost. And maybe I just point out one more thing before you go on, Chris.
Could I just get a word in?
One more thing. Just one more thing. You had a lot of words on the panel. This is only my second go. Let me just say one more thing and I'll cede the floor to you. This is a fantastic day for fighting the race politics that has driven Western society mad for years now with the Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff. You've had actually 2 elections today. One was this one saying no to racial division and The Voice. And the other was just in New Zealand. They're still counting the votes. It looks like the Labor government there will go down in a screaming heap with probably half the support they had, 3 years ago. And one of the big factors there, it's race politics. It's race politics. This is a red letter day for fighting against the race politics that has been splitting not just us and not just New Zealand, but the Western world. Hooray.
I just think it's very, very divisive to describe a measure that is designed to bring the nation together and to give Indigenous people a say on their own affairs as racially divisive, especially when the coalition has had Indigenous advisory bodies and the coalition promises that it will legislate an Indigenous advisory body. It shows that they don't really believe it's racially divisive.
Yeah, but you contradict yourself in the one answer, but you're running through all the arguments that have been rejected. You know, how can the opposition be against this race, this voice when it already has had in its own past lots of Aboriginal voices or advisors? And boy, there have been more than 30 big land councils, 3,000 corporations,
there are lots of arguments to make against the voice without calling it racially
they have
divisive.
it. And when people look at that, Chris, they say this, wait a minute, if you're already getting all these advisory bodies, and then you say you need a voice. What does a voice have that those bodies that you do consult already don't?
There are lots of arguments, Andrew, against the voice.
Parliament in waiting for an Aboriginal sovereignty movement.
In fact, I know my good friend Anthony Dillon
I don't interrupt you when you're making points. I'd be very glad if you didn't interrupt me, right? Okay? You've had your say. Just sit back for once and listen to the arguments that have actually won this referendum.
Now, I've just said there are plenty of arguments to be made against a voice that we didn't hear much about without calling it racially divisive. And my good friend Anthony Dillon here has made this point himself. It's not racially divisive in your view, is it, Anthony, the voice?
Correct. I see it as ineffective. Yeah. But yes, no, I don't see it as racially divisive.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree. I think it's racially divisive, just like I don't think it was advisory either. It was never going to be advisory. I mean, just like I think the full Uluru was 26 pages, but let's bring that on.
There you go. This is the point.
Let's bring that on.
Truth doesn't matter.
Peter, thank you. Andrew Bolt, thank you. We'll talk to you a bit later.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.